You're listening to the Inside the Mix podcast with your host, Mark Matthews.
Hello and welcome to the Inside the Mix podcast. I'm Mark Matthews, your host, musician, producer, and mix and mastering engineer. You've come to the right place if you want to know more about your favorite synth music artists, music engineering and production, songwriting, and the music industry. I've been writing, producing, mixing, and mastering music for over 15 years, and I want to share what I've learnt with you. Hello, folks, and welcome back to the Inside the Mix podcast. If you are a returning listener, a big welcome back as always. And if you are new to the podcast, make sure you hit that follow button on your podcast player of choice. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and also the notification bell so you know when we go live and a new episode drops. So in this episode, we are venturing into the archives of the Inside the Mix podcast, and we are returning to the most popular, the most downloaded episode of 2021, which was the first episode of the podcast, my interview with Zach Vortex from Bristol. So if you're unfamiliar with Zach Vortex, as I mentioned there, he is based in Bristol, that's in the UK, and he's a synthwave and synthpop artist. And in this episode, as I say, is the very first episode of the Inside the Mix podcast. It's amazing how long we've been going, and it's been an incredible ride, and long may it continue. We chat about our shared history of Bristol. As the audience may know, I previously lived in Bristol, and obviously Zach does now. We discuss musical influences, current and past releases, the creative process, and marketing strategies as well, as Zach really does have this down. So I'm not going to witter on for too much now. So let's dive into the very first episode of the Inside the Mix podcast. On today's show, I have Zach Vortex. Zach is a synthwave, retrowave producer from Bristol, the southwest, so hailing from the same area as I do, which is cool. Synthwave music, heavily inspired by 80s nostalgia music and the films of John Hughes, such as The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles. Bristol, Zach. How's Bristol at the moment?
Well, obviously, like yourself, in the lockdown, so not seeing a great deal of it, but it's a great city, right? I grew up in Essex, moved to Bristol 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
I absolutely love it. It's got such a vibrant culture, such good music venues. It's just a shame to see them all closed at the moment. But
I lived in Bristol a few years back, and I love it as well. I was born in Bristol, and then I moved to Cardiff. But Bristol's great, man. I remember playing gigs at the Fleece. Did you ever go to the Fleece?
Yeah.
Many
gig at the Fleece in front of some interesting crowds, supporting some interesting bands, but always good fun. Remember the Fekla?
The boat,
yeah. We supported the Damned there. Which
nice.
Was the most bizarre pairing. We were like a bunch of whiny indie 90s kids supporting a pretty hardcore punk band. Interesting crowd, but they didn't hurt us. It was everything I'd hoped for.
No, the fact is cool, man. What was the last gig I went to watch there? I think I went to watch a Metal Geek the last time I knew. I think it's just before we went into lockdown last year. But yeah, the Tech was cool. And the Fleece, that's still going, isn't it?
Yeah. Love the Fleece. Saw M83 there a little while ago. Space, if you remember your 90s indie, which
I do. Space. Yeah. I've been to a few. I think I played the Fleece a few years back. I think it was like an all-day multi-genre event, and we were heavy metal, and I think everybody else was sort of like singer-songwriter, etc. So it was interesting, man. It was interesting.
They're always the most fun cards to be on, though, aren't they? Got no business being there.
I think we were the band that everybody went to the bar. I think that's probably pretty much what happened when we played. But now you've moved on to sort of synthwave. So you classify yourself as sort of synthwave, retrowave. And you released a song a couple of weeks ago, which is the single from your up-and-coming album? Yeah,
absolutely. So I released an album fairly recently, sort of mid-last year. And didn't think... I've only been doing retrowave, synthwave for a little while. I came late to it, but I've always been in bands playing synth music.
Yeah.
So I sort of came late to synthwave, retrowave. But I did record an album, and it ended up doing really, really well. I was like genuinely very surprised and very flattered, and appreciate everyone who went out and bought it. It sold out twice in days, which was totally unexpected. So whilst I was recording that one, I was writing another one. So although they've come out quite close to each other, there's a new album coming out sort of start of April, which I think is bigger and better than the last one. And I'm really pleased with how it sounds. It's just, I've sent it away to get professionally mastered. It's come back. It sounds pretty good. I'm pretty happy with what the product.
Nice, man. So the album you released first off, that was released, did I say, was it released last year? Was it like last November?
Yeah, around October, November, Neon Horizon, yeah. But yeah, so they were tracks that I had written over the year, sort of consolidated into an album, whereas what I like about the next album, City Nights, is it's an album that I wrote to be an album.
Right.
So I feel like it feels like when you listen to it, I'm hoping people will find, or at least feel what I feel, which is that it feels like one piece of work that was meant to be in that order, and the way it flows was written in that way. So it's very different to the last one, which I would say was more like a collection of songs that I'd accumulated over a year, whereas this one was written as one piece of music. And I think it shows it sort of blends through both sides of the cassette. So I'm really pleased with how it's come out.
Nice. So when you released the first album, what sort of process did you go through for the release? Did you release it, or I saw it's on Bandcamp, isn't it? The album.
It was all very, very new to me. So I sort of discovered synthwave. I've been playing in bands, as we were just discussing, a lot around Bristol, a lot around the West Country, synth bands, but with heavy guitars. But I've always felt a bit, I don't know, I've not been that excited by new music. So I was still listening and writing 90s indie music. And then I think like most people, I watched, it's going to sound really cliche, but I watched Riot and started listening to those types of bands, and it made me feel something. It made me feel that the nostalgia that I'd been looking for, that I was getting with the 90s stuff, but because I was born in the 70s, so I'm an older guy, so I sort of grew up as a child in the 80s and absolutely sort of adore that period. And so it was the first sort of music I'd heard that got me excited since the days of, I don't like, Blur and Oasis battling each other to get to the top of the charts. It was the first time I'd felt that feeling again. So I've sort of gone all in on it.
100%, man. You mentioned Drive there. Did you see I think it was Radio 1 that released like a reimagining of the Drive soundtrack. Did you ever hear that? Yeah.
I bought the Blu-ray when it came out. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It's on is it Zane Lowe?
That was it. Yeah. Zane Lowe before he went over to Apple. Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Can't
I think
film, but it was just that world that they created, and then I think Stranger Things. So the first song I ever wrote was called Vortex Theme, weirdly. Yeah. And a lot of people said it sounded like Stranger Things, which wasn't the intention, but I think it was those types of things and the world they created, and that feeling that it gives you from that 80s feeling that you sort of yearn, because it was a simpler time, right? So I think that's what drove me to write that type of music.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, I wasn't really sure how to release an album. What had been happening is I've been releasing singles that were progressively getting more popular, which again, I'm absolutely astonished that people are listening to my music. It means absolutely everything to me. But that's when I decided to do an album. Knew I wanted to do it on cassette. I collect cassettes. There's loads down there. I always have collected them, again, being an 80s child. And then decided to put it on Bandcamp, did a pressing and did a pre-order, and it sold out immediately. And I was pretty stunned by that. I was very surprised. Then we organised another pressing to happen, or I think, do you call it pressing with tapes? I'm not sure.
I think so, something like that, isn't it? Yeah, a run maybe.
They sold out as well. So that was the process.
It's really cool to see like cassettes selling out, and they're being cool for cassettes. It's so cool. I mean, I've seen it on your social media, on Instagram and Facebook, etc. And you see they just look cool as well. Like when you see a post with a cassette and you've got the artwork behind it as well, it just looks so cool and so alluring from a fan's perspective. Something different, because it's all well and good. I suppose you've got to get your music out there somewhere, but actually just putting a post up saying, here's my music, check it out on Spotify. It's not as engaging. I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't think it's as engaging as seeing like a retro sort of cassette, something tangible like that. And it's so cool. And it's cool to hear that. How many have you got then? How many cassettes have you got in your collection?
It's probably about 30 or 40. It's not huge. I haven't got many from when I was younger, but I do like to try and support up and coming artists. So I've recently bought the Last Concords cassette, Nostalgia Kid. These are all sort of up and coming synthwave artists that have created really, really good albums that I've really enjoyed. And I think one of the reasons, you're right, it's great to feel the physical product. But I also it's one of the few ways I ever listen to an album. I don't know if you're the same, but I find if I'm listening on Spotify, very rarely would I listen to an album start to finish. It would normally be a track here, a track there. But when I put a cassette on my Walkman or in my boombox next to me here, I'll listen to it the whole way through. And as I said, I think that's the way the artist sort of wanted you to listen to it.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, when you think about it, when you develop, going back to what you said earlier about you developing that second album, and you're going to have it so it's going to run from start to finish, and it's designed for you to listen to it that way, and listen to it on tape sort of forces you to do it that way. Because you are right. Like when I listen to Spotify, I find it's on shuffle. Like songs, put it on shuffle or a playlist. If I'm trying to find new music, I'll go to a playlist, and that is just a playlist that somebody has curated of singles. So you don't get that experience. And also, do you have the inserts as well in the cassette? So, you know, when you have when I used to get CDs and I'd read the CD insert, I can't remember if you get those with cassettes. I think you do. Yeah,
not as much. I collect vinyl as well. I've got quite a big collection of vinyl down there.
Nice.
And obviously vinyl's a very similar experience, and vinyl's got that great sound quality that you expect. But yeah, I just like to own that physical product. And I like to help out. It's good for the artist, right? It's helping them out in what is a very difficult time for musicians to make a living. So
100%.
Anything I can do to help musicians out, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's cool, man. It's something like putting this podcast together is sort of a new venture for me in itself. And it's speaking to sort of independent artists is what I want to do. And just not saying I have a massive reach by any stretch, but being able to just help get the word out there. And also I think as well, just by chatting to other artists and starting that network, because I think like you, I don't know, I came into sort of like the synth, actually creating synth music probably about a year and a half ago. And I hadn't realized that the community that is out there, when you go onto things like Facebook, Instagram, all these other sort of rabbit holes that you can go down, and it's huge. There's so many artists out there in this particular genre, which is really, really cool.
We'll be right back.
Attention synth pop producers. Do you feel like your amazing tracks are whispering in the vast musical ocean? Are you trapped in the music production purgatory? Your songs are hidden gems, and it's time the world discovered your talent. Join me at the Inside the Mix podcast. Let's turn your passion into profit. Plug the holes in your production and breathe life into your music. Click the link in the episode description or visit synthmusicmastering.com/podcast to book a free producer potential discovery call. Break free from music production purgatory and let's blaze trails together, folks.
But you're right. But everyone I've spoken to, and I speak to a lot of people now, everyone's been really friendly. Everyone's been supportive. Yeah. I've not found any issues with people accepting new musicians and accepting new synthwave artists at all so far.
So I totally agree, man. I totally agree. Because I think in other genres, you get coming from the metal background, you get your gatekeepers, as it were. So it's very much, I suppose synth music is quite the same, because you've got all the subgenres that lie underneath it. You've got your synth music, and then there's synthwave, retrowave, dark wave, and everything else in between. But it's really cool to not have that sort of gatekeeper experience. Everyone's just really accepting of new artists and willing to offer that feedback and help, and share best practice, which is really, really cool.
Absolutely. I've spent a lot of time on different Reddits or Facebook forums asking for production tips, and everyone's just been so welcoming and helpful and teaching you how to do this with compression and do this with gated reverb or whatever it might be. But everyone's just happy to help, which is just, as I say, I like the scene as much as I like the music. I like the people.
Yeah, 100%, man. So going back to like influences, what you mentioned earlier, you touched on Stranger Things, and I think for me as well, like when I've always been a massive. I was born in the 80s, so I only really experienced. I was young in the 80s, but it's always something that I've been really fond of. Is the look and the feel and the character of the 80s. So when I saw like you, when I saw Stranger Things, it sort of set me off on that pathway to thinking, actually, I want to start creating music. I was kind of inspired by the Duffer Brothers, and it's basically the intro theme for Stranger Things. And I'm thinking, I've been down the heavy metal route. I've done all that. I've been in a band for a number of years, and I thought, actually, I'll just bring it in-house and do all the production myself. Where did you what is your production background? Is it sort of like self-taught? How long have you been in the production sort of game?
Well, I played, so without giving my age away, I'm in my 40s, and I played my first ever gig when I was 14. I remember it really clearly because we had to lie to get into the venue.
Nice.
And it was in this pretty rough pub in Clacton-on-Sea. We had a handful of Sex Pistol covers that we'd learned because there's only 3 chords and it was about what we could do. But it didn't matter at the time. It was so much fun. And then I've been in bands pretty much ever since then, up until recently. And then when I was moved to Bristol, I was in a band called The Citizens, and we played a lot around the area, and we did get a small sort of publishing deal when we recorded an album through that. So I wasn't really into production as such. I was a songwriter and a musician, but was really fascinated with the production side of things, and then sort of moved into production from there. Yeah. So like foremost, I would say I'm a guitarist more than I am a producer or a pianist, but yeah, they're all things that I find extremely exciting that I'm trying to learn. The production side of things is just one of them things that I don't think you ever master, right? Like every day I learn something new. I was listening to your stuff earlier, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. And
thanks, buddy.
And so I don't think you ever master it. I think you always learn, and it's always changing. But that's for me the bit that's exciting. I do try and include guitars into my songs where I can, but they have a real 80s sound to them. I'm pretty particular about making sure the guitars are absolutely swamped with chorus and reverb, and get that sound that I want. So I'd probably describe the new album. What I'd like to think of it is if you sort of took FM 84, Time Cop 1983, and maybe the Midnight, and mixed them all up. That's sort of what I think it sounds like to me. And I'm not trying to. I had this conversation with someone yesterday. I'm not trying to take synthwave in a new direction. I'm not trying to revolutionize anything. I just making music that I like to listen to, and as a result, I hope other people will enjoy listening to what I make. And so far, some people seem to. So I'm really pleased about that.
I have to agree. I think you're definitely right. I think making music that you enjoy and you want to listen to, because I think there have been times where I've listened to stuff thinking, actually, I'm going to have a go at making that, but I'll have a go at making it, but it's not necessarily what I want to enjoy making. And sort of like making synth and just playing around with digital synths. Unfortunately, I'm not privy to any sort of analog hardware. One day, hopefully, but just playing around and making those, and then that sound design and something new, and creating something that you enjoy. And like you say, if people enjoy it off the back of that, then fantastic. I think it's definitely the way to go when it comes to creativity. Definitely.
And I don't. Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And I don't have a style for writing songs at all. I watched an interview recently of Noel Gallagher, and he was saying that sometimes some of his best songs are written whilst watching something on TV, strumming his guitar. And so many songs off the last album were written on a guitar whilst doing something else, thinking, that might work as a synth riff, and then working it out on the synth. Yeah. And then other songs start for me from just finding a sound, playing around with presets, messing around with the presets, and then suddenly on Logic Pro, I use Logic Pro, and then thinking, oh, that could work. And then sometimes the song will just build organically from that. So that I don't have, from a sort of creative aspect, I don't really have a way I do it. Every song comes out different. Sometimes I'll sit down and go, I want to write a song in this style, and it happens. And other times nothing comes. And that was the same in a band. The amount of times we said, oh, we're going to jam a new song tonight, and nothing came. And then the next week, 3 or 4 ideas would come. So there is no set way for me in the way I write my music.
That's cool, man. So you mentioned that you use Logic Pro. Have you always used Logic Pro? Have you used any other DAWs at all?
No, not at all. No, I've only ever used Logic Pro. I think as I've learned, I feel like fairly comfortable with it. I don't think I'll bother venturing outside of that. They're quite complex things.
Yeah, I would agree. I use Logic Pro myself. Previously, when I was recording sort of actual artists, I'd use Pro Tools. But I just find Logic is, in terms of its intuitive, it's intuitive, and it's just easy to use. Like the writing process, isn't it? You can come up with something pretty quick, I find, and the MIDI aspect of it is quite powerful. And now you've got, I think there's the recent update now where you can actually use the clip update, which I haven't properly looked at yet, to be fair. But what I find is with technology, I don't know if you find it as well, there are so many, you've got Logic, you've got your DAW, and then you've got a wealth of plugins. Like there are plugins everywhere. Do you have like a stock, do you have go-to plugins that you use in your production? Yeah,
I do. There's a few. So I'm going to try and remember their names. I think for my guitars, I think it's called Bias 2.
Okay.
I think I said that right. I should have made a note of this. That's a fantastic piece of software. What's beautiful about that is it allows people to upload their sound designs, and you can download. So it's been that's an absolutely fantastic piece of VST. I couldn't recommend that enough for anyone who wants to record guitars. Sometimes, as you can see, I've got an orange amp down there. Sometimes I will mic up the amp, but some of these sort of presets that people have uploaded are so good that I will just plug straight into Logic Pro and use that. Yeah. So Bias 2 for guitars, Serum mostly for synths, and then is it Tal? As well. I use
is that TAL? Tal. Yeah, I know the one. Yeah,
and I use that as well. I'm not a master of synths. I normally start, like probably a lot of people do, with a preset and then adjust that to work how I want it. On my new album, there's a covers of an Eagles song called Journey of the Sorcerer. Yeah. And that whole idea came from a preset in that Tal, Tal, I think I'm saying it right. that made me just think of that song, which is why I did that cover. So that's sort of my process for picking the sounds and the sort of plugins that I want to use. I'll find something that sounds close to what I had in my mind and then tweak it until it sounds exactly as I imagined it would, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Going off on a slight tangent there, you mentioned the Eagles. And an Eagles cover. There was I was listening to your tracks on Bandcamp yesterday, and there was another song. Oh, I wish I made a note of it now. I cannot remember it, but at the beginning, it kind of reminded me a bit of what's the Eagles track? Oh, I can't even remember the name of the Eagles song. That's going to really bug me, really bug me. But it was in the beginning. No, I think it's gone. That's really bugged me now.
It's hard, and you're probably right.
Yeah.
That's when my dad was alive. Our favourite pastime was sat listening to his LPs, and so I grew up listening to Eagles, Led Zeppelin,
cool.
Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
So it's hard not to take those influences in, but I think it's a good thing to do that. That's why one of the reasons I did an Eagles cover, because they were my dad's favourite band, and I thought I can take the things he influenced me on, and I can put my twist on it. And I'll be honest, the whole reason I do music at all is because he taught me guitar when I was like very young, and it sort of grew from there.
That's really cool, man. I mean, going back to the Eagles again, I will remember that song by the end of this, which one it was. But the Eagles, I remember when I started playing guitar, and it was Hotel California's the Eagles, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and it was Hotel California, and I remember listening to that, and it was the harmonized guitar solo at the end, and
that's incredible.
100%. And I was like, I want to play that. I want to know how to do that, and that's what got me into playing guitar. And very much like yourself as well. My dad had the Eagles CD, and I remember listening to it. I'm trying to think if I ever mastered it. I got the intro down. But as a guitarist, it was always the way I would think, right, I'm going to learn a whole song. I'd learn a riff or two, and then I'd just stop, and then I'd move on to another one. What sort of was it the Eagles that influenced you to play guitar? What other bands got you into playing guitar?
I think so. The first concert I think I ever went to was Jethro Tull.
Ah, cool.
When I was about 6 or 7, maybe.
Yeah.
And then it was just hard rock concerts. Because my dad was pretty much into sort of hard rock in the day, so I think it was a mixture of all those bands. And then I saw a film called Crossroads that has Ralph Macchio of Karate Kid fame in it.
He did another film. I didn't even realise he did another film.
If you're into guitar, you should definitely check it out.
Okay.
It's based on the life of Robert Johnson, who's a famous blues musician. But it ends with a guitar competition, or cutting teeth they call it. And Ralph Macchio goes against this character who's played by Steve Vai, and it was that dual guitar that was the thing where I remember saying to my dad, "Oh, Dad, I want to do this." So he said, "Okay, son, I'll get you a guitar." But we were pretty poor growing up where we grew up in Essex, and he bought me an acoustic, and I was like, "That's not quite going to do what I had in mind. I don't think I'm going to play many Steve Vai songs on this."
Yeah. I think I did the same. I think when I wanted to play guitar, I think I got £30. It might be for Christmas or a birthday or something. So I went to Argos and I bought a nylon strung acoustic guitar, thinking I was going to play the Eagles. And I think I was self-taught. I was self-taught playing guitar until I was about 20. Then I went into a recording studio. Went to record an album, realized my technique was absolutely atrocious, and I just hit and bum notes and stuff all the time, and it made me realize I need to take lessons. So I basically then found a guitar tutor who basically had to reconstruct my technique, which was hard work when you've got all that muscle memory ingrained in you, and then going back to it. But going back to Robert Johnson, you mentioned Robert Johnson. Then is that it? I can vaguely remember the story. Is that he's a blues guitarist? Is that the one where does he sell his soul for the devil? Yeah,
that's the legend, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what the film Crossroads is about. It's about, I think the concept is there's a missing Robert Johnson song. They go on this mission to find it.
Yeah.
But it's all about selling your soul to get better at the guitar or whatever it is you want to do. So yeah, that was Robert Johnson. Yeah, and that's basically the plot of the film.
I'm still amazed that Ralph Macchio did another film. But I'm going to have to look him up on IMDb and see how many he's done. Have you seen going off on total tangent now? Do you follow Karate Kid and Cobra Kai? Have you seen that on Netflix?
Yeah. Oh, I love Cobra Kai. Just finished season 3. I won't say anything for any spoilers, but
yeah.
I couldn't watch that. Me and my eldest, I've got a 16-year-old son. We watched that in 2 nights.
Yeah. What, from 1 to 3 or just season 3?
Season 3, but we just binged. I think it was 10 episodes in 2 nights. They really captured karate. They did it really respectfully and really captured the original feel of Karate Kid for me.
Yeah.
And that feel of that 80s feel. They did that exceptionally well, which makes watching it just a real joy, because often when you hear about these things, you think, oh God, please don't do this.
Yeah.
It's going to be a disaster, but that couldn't have been better, I don't think.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think I heard a rumor that they were going to do a remake of Top Gun, or it's going to be Top Gun 2. And then I'm a big fan of Top Gun. And I was scared, much like you, with my head in my hands thinking, oh no, don't. Just leave it where it lies. But I think Cobra Kai is fantastic. Yeah, they've done such a service to it. And now when I go back and watch Karate Kid, I watched Karate Kid 1 the other day, and I just watch it with a totally different perspective now. So it's sort of like seeing it from Johnny Lawrence's point of view. It's so good. But yeah, I won't give anything away. No spoilers.
No. And that one of my favourite films ever is Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh yeah.
I heard somewhere the other day they're going to remake that with The Rock, and it's like no, not my watch. It's not happening.
No, that cannot happen. Because why would you do it? I don't understand why you would do that. Why you just wouldn't let Sleeping Dogs lie, man? Why you would go in there and try and recreate it? And why would they cast The Rock?
Well,
I suppose he's the
everything. I suppose, but
yeah, find something he's not in at the moment, isn't it? It's a case of that, really. Yeah. So go back to your music. So I was listening to the first album yesterday, and like picking it. I think the two standout tracks for me when I was listening to it, I made a note of them here, were Le Broc and Strange Times. So Le Broc is Weird Science, right?
Kelly LeBrock, yeah. Exactly. When I was, what would I have been in the 80s? Like when I was 10, 11 in the 80s, I didn't have a friend who didn't have a picture of Kelly LeBrock on their wall, including myself. So I just thought there's nothing more 80s than Kelly LeBrock. So that was the inspiration for the song. And I think you said earlier, I love John Hughes films. Grew up watching them. Sort of Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles. These are all my favourite films. So it was easy for me. And I think what I tried to capture with that song, and again, I used a plugin called Super VHS on that, which gives it that cassette sound.
Was that for the vocal, for the spoken word?
No, it's for the synths. So the synths have a bit of a cassette wave sound to them. That's what this plugin does. And that was done because I just really wanted to create that sort of feeling of watching a VHS tape of something like Weird Science with Kelly LeBrock in it.
Yeah.
So that was going back to sort of what inspires me to write songs. That was inspired by watching Weird Science, thinking, how could I sort of capture this film, this feeling I get from watching this film in a song? And that's what I tried to do. And that seems to have been well received, that song. People seem to like it. It's been added to a lot of playlists.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. So it's a really, really good song. And then Strange Times. Now, if I remember rightly, does that have... There's guitar in that one in particular, isn't there, in Strange Times, if I remember rightly?
Yeah.
So I think we touched on the guitar at work earlier. So is that you playing all the lead on those tracks?
Yeah. So, as I said, originally I'm a guitarist. Started as a punk guitarist. I said to you earlier, we played with the Damned when they toured the UK. So primarily I grew up as a guitarist. So that's sort of where my passion lies. And I want to sort of keep adding that element to my songs because it just, I think it works if you get the right sound. We talked earlier with that Bias 2 plugin that I use. If I get the right sound, I just think it really works. It really captures that sort of 80s rock sound. And there's probably more in the new album. There's probably more guitar rhythm as well, because mostly on Neon Horizon, the previous album, the guitars were mostly for a short solo in a song. There's more rhythm guitar in the new album, which I think really works with the synths and everything else. So, but cool. That's me playing the guitar.
Yeah, that's cool. So you're trying to incorporate more rhythm guitar into it now. Because I've been trying to do that myself in my own productions, and I'm still trying to find that perfect sound for rhythm guitar to sort of blend in with the synths, etc. And it's I don't know. I think a lot of producers, a lot of artists are perfectionists and constantly tweaking sounds, and it's a case of knowing when to stop. But it's cool to hear that you can be bringing in that sort of that crossover into actual rhythm guitar as well. It'd be really, really good to hear. You haven't been tempted to sort of outsource any saxophone or anything like that?
I had not on this album. I haven't, but I have a song that I did with a really talented guy, Jamie Leeson, his name is, and he played sax on that, and it came out really, really nice. So it's definitely something I would do again. The saxophone definitely works for that 80s sound.
Oh, totally, yeah.
There are some synth sax on the new album.
Yeah.
I use it sparingly because I don't want to try and pretend it's a real sax, because I think you can tell with brass instruments that it isn't.
Yeah.
So, but I do use it sparingly, absolutely swamped in reverb again. But yeah, so I have worked with a saxophone player, and it's definitely something I will do again.
Yeah. I think for me as well, it's something I'd like to approach at some point. I don't know when I would do it. It's finding a saxophone player as well. I've never been in a situation where I've needed to find one, so I don't know how hard they are to come by. I know, for example, drummers are ridiculously hard to find. Yet I don't know how easy it would be to find a saxophone player. But no, I totally agree. I think it's that sound of the 80s, and you hear it now. I don't know. Do you hear it creeping into modern music? I think it is more and more. Certainly the synth wave and synth music and that synth aesthetic sound is certainly creeping into pop music, particularly the latter end of that last year. Probably more so this year as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, I think, and the introduction of
you're probably right. I'll be honest, I haven't listened to anything new for a very long time, and I think that's why Synthwave grabbed me, because I was desperate to find something new. Even my children are listening to Ian Brown, Stone Roses. There's not a lot of pop music, like new pop music in the house, but since discovering Synthwave, it's I think the reason I'm as passionate as I am about it, or retro wave, or whatever you call it, I don't get too involved in the naming of it, but whatever it's called, it's exciting to me, because it is new music being made by new artists that I really, really get a feeling from, which hadn't happened to me with I think modern pop for quite a while.
Yeah,
I did enjoy the new wave metal period. I grew up, like, I loved Metallica, I loved sort of Ride the Lightning and Justice for All, that period. Iron Maiden. Really didn't like. I found it difficult to associate with metal music, sort of that sort of Linkin Park. I'm not disrespecting these bands, but that
like new metal.
I struggled with metal then, and then I'm not really feeling it now either. So it's nice to have discovered a form of music that's being made by new artists that I feel so passionate about, because I did wonder if it would ever happen.
Yeah. Are you? So you mentioned that your kids at the moment, so they're listening to Ian Brown's Stone Roses. Are you sort of, is the musical influence from you? Are they starting to learn instruments as well? Is that something that they're going to be pursuing, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I bought my 6-year-old a half-size guitar, and it's an ornament in his bedroom. But maybe when he's a bit bigger. But I don't see. They're both my boys have got 6 and a 16-year-old. They're both really into music. Yeah, but they don't show any interest in performing or playing or learning it.
That's fair enough, man. So going back to your influences then, it's actually, before I ask that question, you touched on sort of naming of synth, because I'm much like you in terms of relatively new to the scene, I guess, a year and a half in, and actually the naming of synth, because like you, I generally call it synth music. I'm still unsure what to call it, to be honest, at times. So sort of like when I'm trying to find new artists, I'm still trying to work out like what descriptors should I use to find new artists to listen to. So yeah, I sort of settled on synth music as well. I don't know what you think.
I try not to put it like, I don't know. I try not to put boundaries on it in that sense. I know it sounds a bit pretentious, but I don't set out to say this is going to be a retro wave song or to our point earlier. When I start composing, if that's the term, it's just something that feels right. And if it gives me that sort of 80s nostalgia feel, then that's what I go for. So I don't know. I've never really been too concerned if that's synthwave, retro wave, dream wave, chill wave, or however many other waves. But yeah, I like listening to FM 84, Time Cop 1983, as I said earlier. I think I've got dozens of cassettes of bands like that, and I just love that sound. It gives me that feeling, and that's the feeling I want to try and recreate. So I've never tried to work out whether Time Cop 1983 are Dreamwave. I don't think they care, and I don't care.
No, I totally agree. Because I as a side venture as well, I'm sort of moving into the mixing and sort of mastering avenue as well, and part of that is especially it's kind of like having. I don't want to be too broad. I want to then focus into a particular direction. So I constantly find myself thinking, what am I gonna? Where am I looking, sort of thing. And at the same time, I'm like, I don't really want to have a particular niche. I don't know. I think I'm battling against myself a lot because I'm very much like you in the case of I just want to make music that I think sounds good. And if it happens to incorporate those elements, then fantastic. If it doesn't, then it's not part of that particular scene. It's tricky. And you mentioned there the Midnight FM84, Timecop 83. Would you consider, in terms of sort of like the big synth artists, would those be the influences for you, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, I would say so. And Nina, I really enjoy. I think people like Nina could become huge stars because I think their songs are so well composed. Her songs are so well composed that it's more than synthwave with vocals. I think they're fantastic songs. Same with the Midnight as well. But I'm just as influenced and inspired by, as I said, the Last Concord, Nostalgia Kid. There's lots of acts that aren't as big that are just making fantastic stuff, and that's the beauty of this scene is there's always new music to listen to.
So I totally agree. Totally agree. If you were going to move, had you considered like moving into like the live aspect, the live performance? And if so, how do you think you would go about it?
I've given that a lot of thought, interestingly, because it's definitely something I miss. It's something you get a bit of like we were talking earlier about a sort of gigging around Bristol, and it's definitely something I miss doing. And it's hard at the moment to imagine that in the UK.
Yeah, totally.
But I yearn for that day to come back, and absolutely, I'd like to do it again. As I said, I saw M83 at the Fleece, and I was blown away by that live performance. So, although I don't know if you would call him synthwave, but whatever his music is, it's very synth orientated and it's very digital sounding to me. But live, it had a full kit, bass guitarist, and it sounded incredible. So that's how I would see me doing it. To be honest, I could see it. I'd like to start working more with vocalists in the next, not the one coming, but the album after. Yeah. And then if the timing's right, I would definitely see myself trying to perform live with a band. Yeah. Would be the way I'd like to do it. When I was in the Citizens before, our singer had multiple synths. We had guitars, bass. We were playing synth music back then, although it was probably darker and heavier than what I make now. I've been on stage playing sort of synth music and know that I enjoy it and have a good idea of how I would do it. So, yeah, I've given it a lot of thought, and let's just hope that this situation sorts itself out soon, and we can sort of do that again.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally. And also, like, echoing what you said there, I miss the live element of performance as well, and that interaction with the crowd. I think that's probably the main thing I miss from being in a band. One of the reasons I stopped doing the whole band thing was it became too business orientated for me, and it took away the creative element. And I found when it got to the point whereby someone would sort of say, "Oh, we need to write something," and then I kind of just be like, "Ugh," and I thought, it's probably time that I move on. But I do look back with sort of fondness of the live element and performing. And hopefully, I mean, the live industry's been hit so hard, and you just hope that the decent live venues are able to come out the other side, and we can have these live shows. We can all meet up at these live venues again, because it's such a shame. And
it really is. Well, I hope that in a year's time, maybe me and you can have a beer in the Fleece.
Right? Yeah. Or the Hatchet. I used to often go to the Hatchet gigs. Yeah, that'd be ace.
Let's hope so, no?
Yeah, totally.
As we were talking about earlier, Bristol has such an incredible live music sort of... it's such an incredible city. Like we've got 2 universities, so there's a lot of bands that come through. And I've seen every type of band in Bristol, and it's just heartbreaking to know these venues are all closed, struggling. It is really heartbreaking because it's sort of the heart of Bristol for me.
Yeah. It's a very creative city, isn't it? It's just a creative city. If you want to go somewhere as a creative, Bristol was just like a hub for you to go to. And it sort of oozes that aesthetic. And it's just such a shame. So moving on to like your album that's going to be coming up soon. So the follow-up album is called City Nights. Is that correct? City Nights. So you released a track, a single from that, and that came out a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, City Drive. That's doing pretty well. It seems quite popular, but I'm looking forward to people hearing it in the context of the album because, again, I don't mean to sound pretentious, but it was written as one piece of music. And so to have singles on it feels a bit alien, but it's important because of that. That's the way as artists we sort of grown in this modern world with Spotify and everything. The next single coming is the Eagles cover, which is The Journey of a Sorcerer. Yeah, of the Sorcerer even. But yeah, so they're the two singles. That's the next one, Journey of the Sorcerer. And then the album will release in April. And I'm really hoping that people enjoy it. I think it's a much improved piece of work from the last album. And I hope people see that. You're never too sure, right?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm a harshest critic. Whenever I put something out, it's even when I've released it, I listen back to it and I'm like, oof, and I just hear little bits and pieces I can change. But with my creative process, I have to set myself boundaries and time limits and think, right, I need to have this done by that point. And if it's of a good standard is good enough, and just getting it out there, because you could sit on music for years and not put it out because you don't think it's good enough, or you're anxious that people are going to feedback and say, oh, you could have done this and this. I don't know how in terms of the creative process, what do you do in terms of how do you know when something's finished?
Oh, you're absolutely right, and that's the challenge, because there's the potential for it to never be finished.
Yeah,
and I found this in my bands as well. We I said earlier that we had a publishing deal. We recorded this album in this analog studio. There was no digital equipment. It was really cool. It never even got released.
Really,
we just sort of just kept tweaking until the point where the world had moved on from us.
Yeah.
And so I definitely don't want to fall into that habit again. So like, I think, like you said, some songs I can write in an afternoon. Some songs I'll spend 2 weeks on and then just give up on it. And then there are other songs where I'll suddenly think, oh, that riff in that song I didn't do anything with would work really well here, and then maybe as a middle eight in this song, and then I start sort of doing it that way. So quite often I'll revisit something that I thought maybe wasn't quite right, and then it works in something in a new piece of music. So again, there isn't a sort of a set way for that. So, but I do try to not be as critical as maybe I have in the past of every piece of music I do, because like we said, in theory, you could say it's never finished, and that would be my concern, because the way we're told to, because it feels like in the new world we're marketeers as much as we are musicians.
Yep.
And we're all aware that content is king, right? And we've all got to be putting content out all the time. And I even just hate using that word, if I'm honest. I hate using that C word, but content is king. So you are under this pressure to be releasing music every 4 weeks or so to try and keep in the Spotify algorithms and
algorithms, man. Algorithms. That's all I ever hear. No matter what you go on, Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, it's getting in that algorithm. Yeah, it's so hard. And you mentioned there about content, and it is pushing out content, but there's a needle, and then you don't want that needle to move to the point whereby you're just producing content for the sake of it, just to stay in the algorithm, or it takes away from your creative process. And it's finding that boundary between the two. I find it quite difficult.
No, absolutely, it is. Yeah. It is difficult, without a doubt. But the marketing part, what I've discovered, if I've discovered anything over so I only started making this music last year.
Yeah.
And I probably would say I've learned as much about marketing, which I shouldn't really say because my job's in marketing, my day job. Yeah. But I've learned as much about marketing as I have about music production, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I totally agree. I moved on and started doing the Profiter Producer course with Brian Hood, and I listen to a podcast quite regularly with Brian Hood and Chris Graham, and it's all about the audio industry and the business side of it, and it's massive. It's huge undertaking, and there are so many facets to it, and it's all about where you can spend your time wisely, and it's particularly now in this day, in the situation we're in at the moment, in the UK, for those not listening in the UK, we're in lockdown at this point. So the only really way we can reach out to people is digitally. And there is so much noise that you have to break through. And it's being able to do that is hard. But on the flip side of that, for example, your first album that you had, the fact that you were able to sell it out on a first album is fantastic. You hope that the second one would then do the same.
Well, I hope so, and I think you're absolutely right. But I think if I could give any advice to anyone watching this now, and I've worked with a lot of other artists, and I've helped people with their marketing, is don't try and take any shortcuts with it. Don't try and. There is no sort of. I'm not sure what the right term. Silver bullet. There's no silver bullet that says that you can't go and buy a placement in a playlist that's going to make you famous. There isn't anything like that. It doesn't exist. You've got to. My advice to anyone watching now will be, just do it slow and steadily.
Yeah.
Keep releasing music you're proud of and market it in a genuine way, which is what I try and do. I try and talk to people as I would talk to anybody.
Yeah, and I think it shows, which is, and it's really good.
And that would be my advice to anybody. It's not going to happen overnight. It's got to be done slow and steady. And that's what I would probably, going back to my point earlier, from the marketing perspective, that's probably what I learned the most of in 2020, other than how to teach adjectives to my son, which I was doing last week. But it's that organic growth. And just taking it like one step at a time. You're not gonna release. Well, some people might, but very rarely are you going to release a song and it's just going to take off. Like, it can happen, but it's not common.
Yeah.
So don't go into it with that mindset. And I think as long as you're obviously producing good music, people want to listen to. That's the key. Then I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think slow and steady wins the race. In a way. Yeah, and it's not to be put off. If you release a song and it only gets a mild bit of interest. It's just to keep putting out good music, and it will gradually build over time. One quick question. You mentioned then about Spotify playlists. Now, I find when I'm on the internet, browsing through Facebook, etc., and Instagram, now I've started to put out music, I get more and more interaction. I get more and more messages from Spotify playlisters or curators, inverted commas. What from a marketer's it's be interesting now. From a marketer's perspective, what are your thoughts on those? The ones basically that pay to go onto a playlist. Do you think there's something that's viable? Is it worth doing?
Not in my opinion. I would, as we would say in Essex, I would personally give them a swerve. And there's a few reasons why I say that. So one of the places I get most of my streams from is my Spotify radio. And the way you get a Spotify artist radio is by having Spotify use an algorithm like everyone does, but they use an algorithm to see what other types of artists the people that listen to your songs like, and vice versa. So when you see an artist who's got, I don't know, like 20,000 plays on a song with no radio, it leads you to believe they've probably maybe paid for playlist placement in a genre that's not quite right for their music and so on. So my advice would be to not go near those types of marketeers, because like I said, there isn't any shortcuts, and I believe it will hurt you in the long run. I don't know if you've heard, but that Spotify have apparently removed nearly 1 million songs at the start of this year.
I have. I hadn't heard that they'd done that, but I had heard that artists and songs had been removed for that reason that you just mentioned. I hadn't realised they'd done a massive cull at the beginning of the year.
They would, and there are rumours that that's not the last cull they'll do.
Really?
So,
interesting.
So my advice would be, so the reason they've done it, because they sent out an email to people, and it is that they believe that people have paid for plays. So that would, going back to my earlier point, that would be my advice 100%, is if you are going to work with a marketing company that guarantee you playlist placing, be 100% sure it's organic and that it's real and that they're not bots, because it will hurt you in the long run.
I do. I totally agree. I remember, this is probably about 10 years ago now, when I was in the band, and we had a YouTube channel, and we had an influx of views, and there was a strategic way that you could get an increase in views on YouTube, but it wasn't anything. It's not like now I see it from a marketing perspective, in terms of I can retarget and use that information that I get through Facebook, etc., to then target ads if I need to use them for whatever reason. But way back when, it was a numbers game. And I think a lot of the time you can be, as an artist, a creative in general, not just music, you can focus too much on numbers. You have to have so many followers, you have to have so many likes, you have to have so many plays. And like you said there, I think that can be detrimental in the long run. Because if you're paying for those likes and you're paying for those plays and they're not organic, they're effectively pointless. They're not going to help you in any way, shape or form. In fact, with social media, if you do have those, if you're putting an advert out and you're getting likes from all around the globe, and it's just randomers liking your page for the sake of it, when you do post something, it's not going to go out to the people that you want. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face.
And you're exactly right. And those people are also not going to be the ones that will buy your album when you're releasing an album, and they're not going to be anywhere to be seen. So you're exactly right. Yeah.
I've just realised now we're almost an hour in, so we'll probably wrap it up in a bit. Next question I was going to ask you is key dates for your releases coming up. What are the key dates?
So I'm going to have to try and memorise this. The Journey of the Sorcerer, which is the Eagles cover, which I hope people like. It's an interesting take on a classic song, and it's also the theme song for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, so people might recognise the riff from there. But that is going to be March the 5th. Cool. And my previous album, Neon Horizon, will be on Spotify to stream on February the 5th.
Brilliant.
And then the album will release on April the 1st.
Amazing. And in between then, if listeners wanted to listen to one song of yours, which song would you pick? If first time listeners, which song would you direct them to?
I would probably say Kelly LeBrock, the song you referenced earlier, that or Neon Rain, which is currently on one of Spotify's editorial playlists.
I did see that. Yes, congratulations. That's no mean feat to get onto. That's quite difficult to get onto.
Yeah, and that's been interesting, that one, because it's been a learning experience, because that's been on 3 times on editorial playlists.
Oh, amazing.
So they've ended, and then suddenly they've been put on a different one. So I, like everyone, although I'm a year into this marketing world, I'm still learning myself. So but that's been a really interesting journey, having that on one of these editorial playlists to see what that can do for you.
What did you find it helped in terms of your following, your streams? Did you notice?
Massively.
Did you notice?
Massively, yeah. It's it's been added, that song in itself, Neon Horizon's been added to over 1,000 playlists. So,
oh wow.
Without like this concept of going viral, it's sort of what can happen, right? If enough new people come to your song and it's a good song, and then it just grows exponentially, and that seems to be what's happening with Neon Horizon. And although Kelly LeBrock hasn't been added to an editorial playlist, it's gone much the same way.
Yeah,
that's on 900 and something playlists, and which is proof that, for me at least, that you can have a song perform well without the backing of Spotify's editorial playlist.
Yeah. No, that's really good, man. Congratulations. I mean, like you say, being a year in to the actual production side of things and releasing your own music, it's a really good start. And you can only imagine 2021 releasing a new album, it's going to get even better.
Thank you. I hope so. And we've all got plenty of time, right?
Yeah. I find that.
We went out and did our family exercise earlier today, and that's our sort of day, our time out the house for the day. So
I find that I went out for a run. I started running again this year. So I went out yesterday, and then that was it. And I was inside for the rest of the day. There's not much more you can do. I long for the day when I can get out and actually do things.
It's important though, isn't it? And anyone who's watching as well, it's just as important to look after your mental health as well as your physical health. And it's a difficult time for everyone. I've got a friend in Portugal called Synthwave. He's saying that they're in Portugal, they're just going into lockdown now. I've got friends in France who are in a curfew. So certainly around Europe, it's a difficult time for everyone. So this sort of look out for each other.
Yeah, totally. You'd like to think if you look back in a year's time, there would be marked improvement. I love that name though, Synth Bacon. That's amazing. I'm going to make a note of that, and I'm going to go check out. It was Portugal, right?
Yeah, he's from Portugal.
Synth Bacon. I'm totally going to look. Has he got songs released as well, or she?
No, I don't think so. But he's a big Synthwave vinyl collector.
Oh, okay. I'll go check him out though. That's such a good name. What I'll do is, for those listening, I will drop links in the description for your Instagram. I don't know if you want to shout it out now, your Instagram handle.
If I remember it. I can't remember.
If not, that's all right.
Yeah, Sack Vortex Music. But those 3 words are in it in some order or another.
Something like that. Zach Vortex Music. I'll put the handle in the description below. And if you want to check mine out as well, it's at Mark Matthews Producer as well. But yeah, man, thanks for your time today. It's been great actually being able to talk to you. We've been chatting for a while via Instagram and email. So yeah, it's really, really cool.
That's great. Good fun.
Yeah, good luck with the new release as well. I'll keep eyes out for it and I'll repost it and whatnot. And then we'll maybe catch up, I don't know, latter part of the year and have another chat about how it's gone. Yeah,
great. Maybe have a beer, who knows?
Yeah. As soon as I'm allowed out of the county of Devon.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is beautiful, my ad. It is a beautiful county, but I long to leave and go elsewhere.
It's my favourite county, but yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. That's brilliant. Thanks for your time today. And
cool. Thank you.
I'll speak to you soon.